of addressing these concerns from the KOLs in the compliance department. You will need to have a track record in case there are any changes. So it's not uncommon to find that a mistake was made by a field representative in entering data, and indeed Dr. Jones only did have a hamburger, and so how do we change that within our system from a steak to a hamburger without having any eyebrows raised in case those records are looked at. So we need to have a tracking history of who made the change, why that change was made, in order to have that paper trail there. So compliance. Compliance is a very big fan of the final result of the aggregate spend solutions, although I can tell you they're not particularly happy about the hoops that they're having to jump through in terms of building their business rules and all of the pre-implementation that goes into the aggregate spend. As it says in the title, it's not too bad, but it is a fairly in-depth process, and compliance has a very large role to spend in this. But the result of that is that they get a very nice strategic insight into promotional spend, and if you have an active dashboard that can give compliance a look at what that spend looks like at any particular point in time, it's a fabulous tool for monitoring spend activity. I'm going to try to speak with the presenter from Medtronic from the Aggregate Spend conference, who presented his slides about how they're using their data in compliance, and it was a truly remarkable presentation, but also extremely comprehensive as to how you can parse this data in order to find any hot spots or issues you might have to address. This also gives you an opportunity to formalize your transparency and disclosure policies. If you're like most companies, or if you're like many companies, you've probably been sending sort of ad hoc email instructions out to the field as the laws have been changing or as they've been introduced. And there are some challenges that come from this sort of approach. Sometimes there are mixed messages sent out. They may get a message from compliance with a follow-up message from their commercial contacts, and those messages aren't always consistent. We need to make sure that everybody is on the same page, that your field representatives understand where this is coming from and why. As you might imagine, some of the rumors out in the field that we've encountered from sales reps are, oh my goodness, here comes compliance again with another wacky requirement. We don't know where it's coming from, and when they don't know where it's coming from or why, their largest target is going to be compliance. And there can be some resistance to that, and we want to make sure that we handle that correctly and thoroughly. So this also, like your senior executives, compliance is going to be very happy about having accurate disclosures that obviously is going to save money in terms of fine and embarrassment if disclosures are inaccurate or if there are some outliers that should not necessarily be there. And finally, your legal department. We've seen a number of corporate integrity agreements that are requiring disclosure requirements, and a number of legal departments are determining that having an automated solution could be a mitigating factor in future investigations. If everybody is going toward this sort of system, then being an outlier could raise some eyebrows, and you may be facing some unwanted questions in that area. So throughout this, I've been talking about communicating with your employees and what that looks like and where that needs to go. So getting everybody on the same page, obviously, is very important here, aside from taking some of the heat off of compliance. But I know we're faced with, another training requirement. This can be a little daunting when presenting this as a possibility to your field forces who are subject to a number of training obligations. But as I said earlier, there are a number of laws out there. There are a number of requirements. Getting the confusion clarified has enormous impact on the reps and how they do their jobs. If they know exactly what they're allowed to do and what exactly their limits are, and that it's coming from legal and or compliance, that gives them a better footing when they go into a doctor. They may also be encountering questions from their healthcare professionals that they detail to, and they need to be able to have the right answers to that, or at least be able to refer the HCP to the appropriate contact. So there are a couple of different ways to approach your training, and I recommend an in-person sort of awareness presentation to your corporate executives. I think it's crucial at this point right now so that they're prepared for that notice and comment on the rulemaking that's about to come up, and can prepare for that appropriately. In addition, getting their buy-in into getting you a system is absolutely essential. It will help you not only spread the word that this is something that is very important, but it'll also help you get your budget in order to get this implemented. For your field-based employees, as well as your in-house commercial staff, I recommend an interactive online training program for all of them. It provides them with a clear direction as to where they're supposed to go. The interactivity also allows you to test them along the way and possibly spotlight any gaps that you find in training. So obviously, if you're getting your test results and you find that everybody has failed question number 3, it's either a very badly worded question or it's a training opportunity. So that's a big help there. Removing that uncertainty and providing the clear guidance, and doing that through interactive exercises, so that the message is being internalized, is not only going to get rid of that uncertainty, but is also going to improve your compliance and your data integrity. Once you have your policies and your procedures in place, how does a rep input data into Concur? What sort of information is required? What is the change management involved between the old Concur and the new Concur? Are some of the issues that you should be addressing, so that the reps have a better idea of what exactly they're supposed to be doing. Also, having that fluent knowledge of the spend restrictions in terms of time, place, and manner is essential to compliance. And as you all know, that fluency in those issues is going to give them a lot more confidence when they go into a doctor's office and get questions from them on what the laws are. Marketing also needs to know what sort of restrictions are in place for them. Without a detailed knowledge of what all of the states and the Sunshine Act requires of them, marketing really doesn't know what the impact of their proposed activities are. So it is a huge waste of human and capital to have your marketing department embark on a program that they think is going to work in a particular place, only to find out after they've gone through a lot of the exercise that what they're proposing is not permitted. So getting them trained and educated on this is very important. And finally, your vendors. So you are going to have a number of third-party vendors, and hopefully through the discovery process and that unsiloed bird's eye view of your commercial activities, we can get some of those vendors at least a little under control. But your vendors really need to know what your requirements are in terms of submitting data, collecting data out in the field. So your speaker programs. You're probably already collecting the names of attendees at speaker programs, but sometimes there are challenges involved in that. If your vendors are still using a handwritten sign-up form, then I know a number of you are going to recognize the problem of receiving that sign-on form and not being able to recognize any of the names. It's important that they have automatic printed solutions for that. It's important that the vendors understand that there are certain submission requirements, and if their submissions are not correct, then that needs to be amended by the vendor. So before Sunshine passed, we used to talk about various approaches to data collection and aggregation. So we would talk about the status quo and manually collecting using in-house resources, or outsourcing to companies like ours for data collection and reporting services, or of course the automated solution. Today with the Sunshine Act, we don't talk about the non-automated solutions very much anymore. So what are the things, some of the things that you can do to start planning right now? This is not a last-minute process. I tell you that from experience. Speak to some of the companies that have already implemented something like this, and they will tell you likewise. If you put this off until the last minute, you're going to have a very, very